Can anyone hear me?
Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Kamala's Choice, Part 3. We will be talking about the debate, and as you can see on the bottom, we'll get all the commercial stuff out of the way. It's produced by myself. You can subscribe and donate to my channel on YouTube, the Cash App, $JEK3. And let's get this show on the road. I have a lot of people here already in the queue. And okay, there we go. Yeah, I'm missing some people here. Javon. Luke. We got a couple Lukes here. Let's see. Let's get, okay, we got that Luke on.
Yeah, this one's going to be better.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's conversation. As you can see, I tried to get everyone from a lot of different life spectrums and ages. Hopefully, there's a couple of ladies that will be on a little later. But I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves first, and we can get the little idea of who you are and what part of the country you're from. We'll start up with the ladies, of course. Would you like to introduce yourself, Melissa?
Hi, my name is Melissa Smith. I live in Brooklyn, New York. I'm a women's boxing historian and author.
Daniel?
Hi, I'm Dan Warmbrodt. I'm a high school English teacher. I teach freshman and senior English at high school in rural Pennsylvania.
Javon?
I'm Javon. I'm from Southern California, born and raised. I'm 26, and I am a full-time college student, and I am a delivery driver to fund that journey in college.
Oh, man. See, remember we used to have to go to McDonald's. We used to have to work at McDonald's to do things like that. Remember that, Melissa?
Yep.
Luke, how are you doing this evening?
Doing good. My name is Luke Bohm. I live in the south suburbs of the Chicago area. I've been a candidate for a statewide office in Indiana before, and still involved with strategy and strategic planning for campaigns.
Awesome.
Okay, so we do have quite a well-rounded panel here tonight. And we will get this party on the road here. Luke, let's start with you. What was most important to you in last night's debate?
I think the thing that was most important was, at least from my perspective, was seeing the stark contrast between a candidate that prepares themselves in a vacuum with their own rhetoric and their own talking points versus a candidate who does her work and was with a group that trained her correctly. I mean, I can tell you this as somebody who has done debates before, that when you have your team in the room, you want people to challenge you, and you want people that are going to disagree with you. And I think that's what we really saw, because every time anytime Trump came at Harris, she deflected it or she stayed away from it. She didn't take the bait. However, Vice President Harris did a masterful job of baiting Trump into every bad answer that he could give her. We think that the Trump campaign is such a circus when we shouldn't. We should still think of it as the nominee of a major party for the presidency. So we do need to look at this with eyes of a real candidate, not a reality TV show. And I think that was the biggest contrast.
Javon?
So for me, just as just a younger person who's not following in, I think the biggest thing was kind of seeing how Kamala kind of
You're distorted. We can't really hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So the most important thing in this debate was kind of just seeing where Kamala Harris was at and seeing her kind of define herself, and kind of put that line between her and Biden, which, to be fair, I don't think she really did a great job. But I think what actually happened was Kamala, like 50% of what she said was defining herself, and then 50% was baiting Trump. And I think she did a really good job at that. And I think the world kind of got a good feel for what she has to offer, or at least a lot more than we did before the debate. So yeah.
Daniel.
I agree with pretty much everything Luke and Jovan, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Jovan, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said. Kamala Harris was the grown-up in the room, unrattled by any of his taunts that he definitely Trump tried to taunt her, and she didn't take the bait. However, Jovan said he baited Trump, and he took the bait. The one thing I really did like that she did is a couple times Trump would start speaking with his mic muted, and the moderators would turn his mic back on. I think they said he ended up with an extra 5 minutes of talking time over and above what Kamala Harris had. But there was one point where she wanted to make a point, and she kind of pushed the issue, and they still cut her off and went on to Trump. And then when they did come back to her, she insisted that she address the issue that she wanted to address beforehand. And I'm glad she did that, because I thought that made her look like she wasn't somebody who was going to be pushed around.
Melissa, what was your point here?
I agree with everyone's points. Look, she had a lot to prove. There's a lot of people in the United States, even though she's been vice president for 3.5 years, that really don't know who she is, because there's been a serious drought from mainstream media in covering her. And when they have, it's been pretty negative, frankly. So she had a lot of real fine needles to go through. She had to show her worth. She had to show her intelligence. She had to be on top of the issues. She also had to ensure that Trump, who is known for bullying, would not bully her. And, she started out right off the get, crossing over into his space, insisting on shaking his hand. I think that really rattled him, and it put him essentially on the defensive throughout the show. She also, had to, she had to present ideas that were enough mainstream so that she could also speak to independents and Republicans who were watching, as well as her Democratic base. That was very important for her to do. And she addressed that directly by asking for people to really consider voting for her, that they had a place in her party, a place in her tent, if you will. She was very clear on who was supporting her outside of the Democratic Party. I thought those were important points that she had to make. And again, she came off as smart, crisp, sharp. She made very few stumbles, and was able to really take the wind out of Trump's bullying, and made him, frankly, appear a little bit unhinged in some of his responses when he did take the bait.
Were there any issues that she didn't address that you wanted her to?
Well, this is more the fault of the a couple of things. First of all, the answer on Israel and Gaza was, again, a very fine needle to thread. It was not quite where I would have liked to have seen it, but I understand how difficult that is to answer. But I really felt that the moderators could have dug in more to the Project 2025 matters. I know it kind of got mentioned and very much dismissed across that, but there are some really very radical items in that playbook that I felt could have been addressed, and that was really for the moderators to do. And she did try to bring it up, but there were items such as, digging in on getting rid of the Department of Education, digging in on a lot of the changes to Department of Justice, to Department of Homeland Security, all those kinds of things that I thought would have really helped set up the difference in policy, but that was not part of the moderator's plan.
Daniel, as a teacher, did you feel the same way that Melissa felt?
I one of the things I wish that they would have brought up more, and I don't know that it was actually so much a factor of Kamala Harris as much as the moderators, but I was kind of surprised they didn't bring up more discussion about Trump's disrespect for military and comments he's made about the military. Just recently, he was in Arlington Cemetery doing a promotional video or something, and he was photographed giving a thumbs up in the middle of the cemetery for veterans. I just thought that was really disrespectful. And if he wants to be commander in chief and be in control of our military, and he has such disrespect for the military, I kind of wish they would have brought that issue up more and kind of heard what he had to say about it. I know what he would have had to say about it, but it would have been interesting to watch him sort of become unraveled over that issue too.
Javon, as the youngest member of the group here, what were some of your concerns, or what were your things that you thought should have been brought up at work?
Yeah, so a minor one would be the whole Gaza situation. I think even though they did talk about it, I think both answers were pretty just ridiculous. Like they both had their hands tied. I didn't like it. I didn't like where Kamala chose to take it. But I think one thing that I was really waiting for was gun violence. I heard there was a few comments, maybe I missed something, but I did hear a few comments, about Trump saying that Kamala is going to take your guns away. And then she was like, no, I have a gun, type of thing. Like it came up a few times, but like as someone who works at a school, I see how desensitized the kids are there. And I just think I'm very displeased with how Trump dealt with it. And I'm very displeased how Biden dealt with it. And I really I was hoping, Kamala would, have some sort of policy or something, or they would bring it up at least. But to me, it just didn't get talked about enough, and it's a huge problem. I mean, there was just a big one, I think, in Georgia, right? And it's just, I was just really upset that they didn't talk about it, because it's just going to continue to get worse, so that's where I'm sitting.
Luke, were there any subjects that you wanted to discuss that you didn't hear about?
So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a subject. I really wish that when the candidates, both of them, and we, I'm a Democrat, so we know which side of the aisle that I'm leaning on. I wish the moderators would have taken both candidates to task a little bit harder when they make claims about things they've done or their own records. Like, I'm sorry, you can say, oh, I did this. Oh, okay, well, thank you, former president. Please, give us an instance. Cite your source. And thank you, Vice President Harris. Of course, sure, you're the only ones who have prosecuted Latin gangs in California. Okay, when did this happen? Because we have gotten to the point, and I said this on my last answer, but we really need to start getting some better answers out of these candidates. Okay, yeah, sure, you're a prosecutor in California. Oh, sure, you were a con man for 50 years. Okay, cool, we all know this. But let's dive into what they did, because in government, there might be some things that just sound mundane and not interesting whatsoever. But then when people can talk about what their work is, think of the Department of the Interior. No one thinks of the Department of the Interior. Go look at what they do. They do some amazing things. And if we want to connect with people who are not involved in politics and make them care, we have to explain why it matters and some of the really cool things that can be done with it. So it's not a topic that wasn't brought up. It was just that the moderators could have really pushed them to give answers of being human beings, not just a pamphlet that you'll read on your doorstep.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of agree with what everyone had to say, but I especially was thinking about what you said, Javon. You know, being a part of former military. I'm still not quite getting the concept of having to have an AR-15 to shoot Bambi. I mean, I'm sorry.
No, you're right. You're right.
Anyway, I'll try to keep my rants to a minimum.
That's why I came on the show.
But let's talk about the border. And I know, being in Southern California, right here in San Diego, 12 miles from the border, I have not seen any of the cartel in my backyard, running through with kilos of cocaine or, whatever. I haven't seen a bunch of Chinese communists being dropped off bus in my neighborhood. But maybe I wasn't looking in the right places. But anyway, Melissa, what do you think? Should we close all of our borders? And I believe that period in our history was called isolationism. But should we close all our borders or just the southern border?
Well, I don't know what you mean by close. So you have to define the term of close first, because I don't
Well,
think we close borders. What we do, we have.
I'm using the definition of a Republican. Closed borders. I guess to me, when you say closed borders, I'm thinking of Germany, East Berlin,
No, we don't do that. I'm sorry. This is a nation of immigrants, and we're built on this. Unless you came here on a slave ship, you came here on some kind of immigrant ship, or you flew here, or you're still flying here, or you walked here. I mean, I'm in New York City, and we have been facing the migrant crisis. And when you look into it, these are families that literally walked from Venezuela up through Colombia, up through the Isthmus into Mexico with their children because things are that horrible. I get it. My family came here for a lot of reasons from Europe in the 1890s and in the early 1900s. They faced persecution, they faced financial hardship. So I get why people want to come. I also get the need for some kind of sensible process to let people into the country. You can't just suddenly have a whole, thousands of people running around with nowhere to live, no opportunity for them to get integrated into the society. And that's one of the things we're confronting in New York City, because we really have not come up with a sensible process for dealing with these migrants who are many of whom are families with small children who need to go to school, who need to be able to eat food, to have medical care. So there are real issues in terms of what it pushes a society to, in terms of that kind of asylum seeking, which is one whole category of people who are coming. They're coming to seek asylum. And I don't think we close it off and say, no, you can't seek asylum. We have to have a process for that. I'm not saying you just don't have gates. That's not what I'm saying either. What I'm saying is we have to have sensible processes so that when these surges occur, we're able to manage them in a humane way and provide services and help for these families as they cross into the country and give them an opportunity to be able to have their cases heard ethically, smartly, with the kind of support that they need. It's not as if we can't afford it. We can. You know, this is an incredibly rich nation. I think some of the things that the Biden administration has started to do, or at least has talked about, of then going into these countries where people do need to migrate and figuring out how do we help people in their own country so that they don't necessarily have to come here. Then again, you know, if you're in Ecuador and you're dealing with, you know, rabid gang violence, what do? You help the local police to interdict to stop violence in the streets so that the people who are living in Ecuador, families, feel comfortable to be able to stay. They don't feel threatened. They don't feel terrorized. So it's not only our problem; it's a much deeper issue with the governance in countries, the supports that are provided not only in our own country but in other countries for their populations, and how we deal with those matters. But throwing up a gigantic wall does not solve the problem. It just forestalls it, and it creates an environment of, to me, that is incredibly negative and harmful, not only to the people who want to enter the country, but to ourselves in terms of our own humanity that continues to crush. And that's not what we're here for. We're here to support human beings. Not every person can become an American. Yes, you have opportunities to, again, review who are they, what are they, are they genuinely someone who should be allowed to come in on an asylum case? If so, how do we help? How do we use the resources of the American government, the not-for-profit organizations that spring up around that, to be able to create a landing where these folks then become productive members of society who are, you know, will become stalwart Americans. So that's my feeling.
My brother-in-law is from Brazil, and he had to go through a lot of things in order to get his green card. It wasn't quite an open border. I don't. That's why the term is kind of fuzzy to me. But Siobhan, what do you think? Should we have closed borders, or should we just close our southern border?
Well, I've always been for open borders, but after that debate last night, I'm very concerned for my dogs and my cats. So I don't know if I fully agree with an open border. But real talk, though, I'm not an expert at border issues, but I know that immigrants are the backbone of this country, and I think I just want to hear how we would even close it in the first. Like, how do you just close our border? Like, how do you do that? Like, to me, that just doesn't even compute. I think it would be a horrible idea. As far as the South and everyone else, I think that's even more silly because, like, I mean, what's stopping a Mexican person from going to Germany and then flying in? You know, I feel like there's a lot of loopholes, and that wouldn't work either. It sounds as silly as like the Muslim ban or whatever. You know, there's just these Republican claims of all these border things that need to happen. I can't even imagine it happening in the first place. And maybe that's just my ignorance on the topic, you know. But I know for a fact that as someone from Southern California, born and raised, you know, Mexican people are the backbone of this country. They work hard and they do jobs that we don't want to do. And they have kids that turn into great American citizens, and they do great things. And a lot of my friends are those people. And so just to think about closing the border just for Mexicans, or just closing the border at all, the fact that it's even up for debate is just silly to me. So that's kind of where I stand on border issues.
Yeah, it does seem, well, anyway, once again, Daniel, what's your thoughts open borders, closed borders. I mean, what happened to give me your poor? What's that thing on the foot of the Statue of
Give me
Liberty?
your poor, your tired, huddled masses yearning to breathe free.
Yeah, yeah,
And then
just
they put it
words,
on,
right?
yeah, and then they put it on the Statue of Liberty, and then they use it as their icon of American freedom, but then they don't want to abide by the sentiment. Mostly what I would have to say about it would be echoing what Melissa has said. Uh, Closing the border, that's just not something that we do. I mean, except maybe in like a time of war or something. Uh, that being said, I think all countries need a secure border where people coming in and going out need to do so in like a really organized fashion. There has to be some common sense for all the reasons that Melissa mentioned. Where are these people going to go once they get here? Right? And the only thing I think I really have to add to that is the southern. You asked about the southern border as compared to like all the other borders. I think the whole notion that the southern border is somehow different than the northern border kind of shows like the racism that's coming from the other side. Is just the whole fact that there's something wrong with the folks coming in from the south, but maybe the folks coming in from the north, they're okay. So it's pretty telling, just the whole notion that they want the southern border closed, but not the northern.
So, Luke, what's your thoughts here?
Well, I've got a two-part answer, and the first one's a little tongue-in-cheek, but borders don't exist. Borders aren't real. It's a line on a map that someone drew. That's it. There, of course, they're divided by rivers or whatever. Once again, those are man-made. Go back in the early days of man, and we didn't have these borders and say, hey, you have to stay over there because I drew this line in the sand. It doesn't make any sense to me. It is the continuation of horrific economic policies by a Republican Party that does one thing and then blames the other side for it. If you close any border, particularly the southern border, you are going to wreck agriculture in the United States. Yeah, the point that was made earlier. Yes, a lot of migrant workers work a lot of jobs that ordinary Americans don't want to. And quite frankly, I would much rather have my neighbor be somebody who walked 2,000 miles across the desert with their family on their back in the belief that picking tomatoes in a field is a better life than they had, and they risked everything for it. I'd rather have that than Jim Bob McGee with his giant truck and his obsession with guns and the American flag. Like, I'd much rather have that. And I'm sick of the rhetoric vilifying these people that just want to work and have a better life. I don't understand how that. I don't understand how we can also say, oh, we need to help them become an American. I'm sorry, but if you're willing to do all that to come here, you should just be an American. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be like, oh, you're an American. No, you're an American. If you want to be part of our society, you're part of our society. We are an idealism. We are not a set in stone list of check marks where you have to be all these things. American society is idealism. And if you believe in the American way of life, the American dream, then you're an American. And vilifying people that want to become that is not the answer.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's an invisible line made by someone that is long past dead. And there's a lot of things that have changed. So maybe like you said, rather than have Jim Bob, with his American flag and gun. I might want to have Pedro or Xavier with his family that have walked 1,000 miles in order to get here. Uh, but once again, I might be a radical old man. It might just be me. So, um, but let's. I had another question here. Now that we've seen the two presidential candidates, would you like to see a debate between the two vice presidential candidates, Mr. Walls and J.D. Vance? And I'll start with you, Lou.
Yeah, the simple answer is yes. I would. I didn't really pay that much attention to the debate. I watched clips and I watched it again afterwards last night. But no, I would tune in. I would have all the snacks ready because I would really like to see Tim Walz just shake his head in complete disappointment of JD Vance for 2 hours. Like that would be must see TV. And I think that's where you're going to see the contrast because, Trump is his own schism within the Republican Party. JD Vance is the voice of the Republican Party right now. That is where they've gone. They've gone that far right. And I think you're really going to see the crazy come out of the woodwork if you put Vance on TV in front of a moderator and an opponent for 2 hours.
Javon, what about you? Would you like to see a vice presidential candidate debate?
Yeah, I would love to. I, as a young person, I consume a lot of political content through social media, and those debates, those clips come up all the time on all the different platforms. And so I think it would be a really good way for me to get a better grip on the vice presidents or the vice presidential candidates. I don't actually know much about them. I know that Waltz is very progressive, and have liked some of his policies on healthcare and stuff that I've heard. JD Vance, to be honest, all I know is that he used to be a drag queen, and he's
He
very
likes
conservative.
scotches too.
That's a new one. So just as a young person, I would love to see a debate to get a better grip on what they all stand for, because obviously it is important, and we have all this information about the presidents, but I would like to get to know them a lot more. So I'm all for it, 100%.
I see Miss Balmer is here, and Dahlia, how are you doing this evening?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you fine.
Hello.
We were discussing whether or not after last night's debate, whether or not you would like to see a vice presidential debate between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz.
Yeah, sure. I'd be open to seeing it. I think it would be worth hearing. Definitely, for sure.
Daniel.
Oh, I would definitely love to watch vice presidential debate. Waltz, Kate Vance. I don't really know if we would learn all that much more about J.D. Vance. He's a two-dimensional cartoon, and I think the only new information you're going to get out of him is just more crazy. But I would be interested in hearing more about Governor Walz and his positions on things. I'd like to learn more about him. Like I said, J.D. Vance, I don't think there's anything else new to learn except more fodder for memes and eating cats and dogs and things like that.
Do we know if there's a possibility of the VPs coming together and doing a debate?
No, we haven't heard yet. The most that I've heard is that perhaps Trump wanted to have another debate, and we haven't even heard about that yet. This was just kind of a question that I was concerned with. Something that I just threw out there. Melissa, what about you? Would you like to see a vice presidential debate?
Who, me?
No, Melissa. I was asking Melissa.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
hi. Yes, absolutely. I want to see that debate. And it is scheduled for Tuesday, October 1st, from 9 to 10:30. Not certain where it is going to occur, but I'm seeing online that it's supposed to have been set for October 1st. So we'll see whether it actually happens. But yeah, I think, again, there's, this year versus a lot of other years, there's tremendous contrast. And I think it's important for us to really discern what those contrasts are and why. Whilst, we do need to get to know both candidates better. I mean, they're a heartbeat away from the presidency, particularly important for anybody who's going to vote for Trump, and to know who Vance is. You know, what he's shown us so far is, a lot of radical misogyny, but other than that, it's kind of hard to tell. Walz seems to have a lot of progressive positions, but it would be good to see him defend them in a debate, and how he handles that kind of pressure.
Dahlia, we were talking about uh, the subjects of the debate. Were there some subjects that the candidates didn't address that you wanted addressed?
I was thinking about that, and not really. I think they went through short, high level, of course. And debate's not going to get um, granular specifics, right? But I thought they went through rather quickly. I know it went over, but I thought they went over some really important pieces that I was interested in hearing about. And I was thinking about, was there something more? And no, I know I'm joining late. Were there some things that were highlighted by this group that they would have liked to see or hear more about?
Gun violence was one of the things that was mentioned. Uh, you know, uh,
Okay, talking about more, because I know that they touched upon gun control, but you're talking about gun violence. Is that what you're saying?
yes, well, both. You know, uh, as I said, I find it comical that you need an AR-15 to kill Bambi. It just,
Yeah, yeah. I think I remember her touching upon just well confirming that there's been discussion about her and Walls trying to get rid of guns when there actually has it. And I've heard this before. It's been very clear um, that it's more about gun control versus trying to wipe out all the guns in this country. I mean, nobody's trying to do all that. So I appreciate the fact that it was clearly stated.
and another thing that I thought should have been stressed more, and the panel can go through it, and that was education in schools specifically. Uh, we hear so much about they're teaching critical race theory in schools. We're hearing about books being banned,
Mhm.
things like that. What did you want to hear more about education in our schools? And I'm going to start with the teacher here, Daniel.
Uh, yeah, it's kind of scary that they're considering doing away with the Department of Education and doing away with public schools in general. Uh, I think the whole motivation is just a move towards every school being a private school so the rich can go to school. I don't really know what they want folks that aren't rich to be able to do. Um, it seems like they want to promote their own agenda in schools. Um, Banning books that don't fit into their worldview. It's concerning. I don't really know what I have to say about it beyond that.
Javon, you're a student. What's your thoughts here?
Um, well, so I actually live in a city called Temecula, and in Temecula, um, there there was three congressmen or three congress. There was three city council members voted in, and they belonged to this crazy radical church called the 412 Church, and they immediately voted to ban a whole bunch of books in the schools in Temecula. And it caused this huge uproar amongst the students. Every single day at a certain time, the students would march out, and I would watch them from where I work. I would watch them, like hundreds of kids marching out. And so when the topic of like education comes up, and how each presidential candidate's going to deal with it, I think the idea of getting rid of the educational board, and I think the idea of going private, and so people can ban certain books and stuff, I don't think it's going to work. I really don't think it's going to work, especially from the perspective of those kids. Like Gen Z and Gen Alpha, like they're smarter than that, and they don't like to be controlled in that way, and they have access to the internet. They're above that whole situation. And so again, back to the topic of like whether or not they should have been talking about public schools and all that stuff a little bit more. I think they should, but in a more liberal way. Maybe that's just my bias, because the whole idea of going private and all this crazy stuff, like from my experience, from what I've seen in my city, it's just not going to work. Again, it's just not going to work. It's a step back in history, hiding information, and hiding certain things to try and manipulate what you want the kids to learn. It's just in a more conservative way. It's just not going to work. And so I do wish they would have talked about it a little bit more, now that you mention it, James, because it's an important thing, and it's only, again, it comes up all the time.
Yeah,
So
can I add to that? Is it Jovan?
Jovan, yes.
Jovan, yeah. So I'm in San Diego, so I
Okay.
watched all of that happening.
Okay, yeah.
Ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I am grateful being in California. We've got some protections here on book banning, even though low key undercover, some of these districts have tried to, as in the case of Temecula, which really found its way up to our governor's ear.
Right.
And so that started a whole other conversation of like, how can we look at things legislatively, which I think, wasn't there I know he signed a law barring these type of school book bans. I want to say early 20 or late 2023, which may have gone into effect earlier this year, if I'm correct.
He did.
Okay.
Yeah. He was quick with it too. He was not going to let that slide.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the benefits, I think, of living in California, is that these things might slip under the radar for a minute, but it's going to be addressed, and even more importantly, addressed through legislation.
Melissa, what did you think about that? Did you think they should have devoted more time?
Yeah, I think, as I had mentioned, as part of the Project 2025, that's one of the key points in Project 2025 mandate for change, which was the playbook they'll enact if Trump comes into play. And the big thing there is they want to just do away with the Department of Education entirely, and then do a lot to disenfranchise public schools across the country, allow book banning across the country, and so on. So I thought that was something that would have been very important to talk about, again, to show the contrast, because certainly, Kamala Harris's position is going to be absolutely for public schools. She grew up in public schools. So, this would have been an important discussion point. And to see Trump attempt to defend closing public schools would have been an interesting thing. It's a very scary thing. I mean, when you look at the University of what is it, the New College of Florida, which just dumped half their library in a dumpster a few weeks ago. I mean, it's very heartbreaking that this is happening in America. And so, yes, I think it would have been a very important topic. If nothing else out of the Project 2025, the issue of banning public schools and shutting down the Department of Education for all the good that it does in terms of supporting schools, public schools across states and in local jurisdictions would have been very important.
Luke, what were your thoughts? Did you think that they did not spend enough time talking about education?
No, no, I don't. And Melissa, God, I'm listening to her speak. I'm like, all right, well, there's a point I can make that's gone. All right, there's another point that's gone. Okay, all right, cool. I'm just gonna sit here and look pretty then. But no, she's exactly right. We are. I don't know why more people are not shouting that this is fascism. It is just straight fascism. Project 2025 and banning public education is. Why are we not bringing this up more? Why was this not given more time at the debate? This is a major issue. People do not understand what public education does for this country. There are areas in this nation, in poor and impoverished areas, that the public schools are the backbone of the community, and they're the only opportunity some of these kids might have to have a better future. So as soon as you start talking about that, you're immediately eliminating some of the poorest communities, and this is inner city and rural as well. I know you guys are out in California, being out there, with the nice weather and all that. But yeah, you guys also have very rural areas that the public school being gone because it got consolidated or a public school moved in on the next town over 10 miles away, that would kill the education of a lot of children. We're very close to going back before FDR and having lower literacy rates, lower kids that can do math. There's going to be kids in West Virginia and Arkansas and wherever else that just don't go to school because their parents can't afford it, or they don't have the resources. So yeah, I agree. There needed to be a lot more time spent on that.
I'm hoping it's brought up when Walls is debating because, he in Minnesota they have free breakfast and free lunch every day for those
Mm-hmm.
children. It's precisely because he understands that schools are an important factor in a community, and not all children have enough food to eat. So
And
it's not
and
a
and
period.
how dare he feed children? How
Right? How dare
Oh
he
my
feed
God,
children? I
so
know.
so horrible, not wanting
Ugh.
children to starve.
Uh, we do. I have Miss Sims here. We can't see her. As soon as she gets her camera on, she's actually from Minneapolis, and I would like to get her take on exactly on the vice president, because one of the assertions that's always made is that Governor Walsh let Minneapolis burn. Miss Sims, get your contrast up there a little bit because we want to see that pretty face, and we want to know what you think about your governor running as the vice presidential candidate.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can hear you. We
Oh,
can.
there I am.
Okay, there you
All
are.
right. Yeah, there I am.
So, well, your thoughts on your governor running as a vice presidential candidate with Camilla?
As I've said before, all politics worldwide contains at least three things: strategy, power, and control. I think it was a good strategy to choose him. Number one, Minnesotans are high in voting. And so at this point, you're strategizing to either stay in power or to gain power to control others or other things. It's a good strategy.
Okay, so we were talking about education, and as Melissa brought up, the governor, your governor, is one of those progressive governors. He believes in feeding kids. What's your thoughts? Do you think that we should have talked more about the economy, or what? I mean, as far as kids are concerned.
Um, children are the way you continue a civilization. If you don't have children, your civilization and population dies, James. So, and when they come into this world, if you're not prepared to take care of them, to feed them, to teach them, whatever, I mean, it's you're really committing suicide. So if you're thinking about that, not only children and life and going on, you will do what you can to promote the children, to see that they get fed, to see that they're healthy. This is bottom line stuff.
Okay. Uh, I want to get the rest of the panel. Another thing I wanted you to address. There were accusations that Governor Walls let Minneapolis burn during the George Floyd situation. Uh, what were your thoughts on that? Did was that part of his responsibility? Was it the mayor's responsibility? Exactly what were your thoughts on how people outside of Minnesota think of the way that it was handled?
I really hadn't put much thought into it, James, because at that time, uh, we were doing the best we could, and everybody was doing the best they can. And in terms of pointing out one person to blame, that doesn't make sense to me. I'm a bottom line type thinker, and so I just don't go that route. So at this point, I don't know how to answer your question. I don't blame him. I don't. A lot of things that happen, and blaming him, you shift the focus from who actually did the killing. That doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, all right. Uh, Getting back on track here with the rest of the panel. Uh, Talking about economics and inflation, do you find it interesting that everyone points out high prices, but no one points out record profits? And I'll start with you on that, Melissa.
Oh, yes. Yes. That is absolutely the
Again, I
case.
mean, maybe it's just me.
No, I mean, look, they are record profits for across the boards, and it's like no poor people bear the brunt as usual. That's just the way it goes, right? Or the way these folks want it to go. Um, and when a sandwich goes from $4.99 to $6.99, that means a lot to a worker who earns minimum wage, which federally is still $7 an hour, if that's even possible to believe. Now in New York State, we're at $15 an hour now. But so that that means that person doesn't eat, right? If it's me, rich person, I'm spending $7.99 on my very fancy latte. Oh, what do I care? Um, so it's very disingenuous to jump all over inflation and to blame, the current administration that has managed to actually maintain pricing as best they can in a global situation of inflation. So, we're attacking these processes or these problems by headline rather than digging into what the real economic factors are and what we can do to address them. And in terms of having the conversation also include, well, what about the record profits? What about the fact that you are making more on that, the elements of the cost of that sandwich than you ever have in the past? Oh, and P.S., your CEO is making 100% more than they made last year. And last year they made 200 million, and this year they're making 400 million. Um, so, I mean, the inequities are just so huge that they're mind boggling. We can't even fathom the difference in wage between a minimum wage worker in a company and the CEO. That annual salary won't even be the equivalent of a bar bill, right? Maybe the bar bill for a month of that CEO. So, this issue, the inequities in economics are so deeply entrenched now that we can't even see the forest for the trees. So it becomes very easy to manipulate the fact that a person doesn't have the money to pay for gas because their salaries are low, and therefore get angry and say, yeah, 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 all right, you're going to help me on that, rather than addressing and educating that person about what a lot of the real issues are. I mean, that's why the labor movement becomes so important, and why, again, coming back to Project 2025, they are all about just killing labor, right? They want to completely gut the Labor Relations Board. They want to gut the opportunities for people to have collective bargaining. They want to get rid of things like the Davis-Bacon Act, which ensures market wages, fair wages for construction work that's using federal money. That means all that infrastructure, those billions of dollars we have in infrastructure money, part of that goes to pay the workers a fair salary using this Davis-Bacon formula, an act, by the way, that was put into law when Herbert Hoover was president in 1931. It wasn't even an FDR thing. It was Herbert Hoover. So our understanding of a fair wage and equity in wages is a very long, long, long American story, and yet we are looking to gut this, or the Republican Party and those forces are looking to gut this, and so it's very convenient to talk about the price of gas or how milk is $4 or whatever it is without addressing all of the other issues. So I agree, we really should be talking about the other the iniquities that balance that. The fact that you're paying that suddenly that $7.99 for a $4.99 sandwich, but the companies that are providing those elements for that food are making record profits. I agree.
Javon, being the youngest member of the panel and trying to work your way through school, what's your thoughts on this? Everyone talks about gas costs $5-6 out here in California, but hey, to get like Melissa pointed out, the CEO is making records bonuses. Everyone
Right.
in that next level are making record profits, uh, but nobody mentions that.
Right. So, as a young person, it's extremely frustrating. I think the elephant in the room here is that this country is run by billionaires, and we're in late stage capitalism. And I mean, the wage gap, are the what's the word for it? The income gap is just so
Inequality.
income inequality in the income gap is it's so frustrating for me. Like my entire generation, we're just so upset, like because we don't even have the same chances as like financial chances to do things like buy houses and have a good savings and all this stuff because the billionaires are hoarding all the money. I mean, there's not much more to it. And I think at this point, politician wise, like from a political standpoint too, it gets even more frustrating because all the billionaires have a hand in both sides, the Democratic and Republican side. And so it just really seems like it's an ongoing thing and there's no solutions to it. And all the presidents and all the politicians have their hands tied. And it's only going to get worse. I mean, it's hard to be optimistic when you talk about these things and you look at, the fact that inflation keeps on getting worse and billionaires keep on getting richer, but it is what it is, politicians don't want to talk about it, and we're the ones suffering. So
I,
it's
I'd
frustrating.
I'd like to add one thing, Javon, if I
Good,
could.
Go ahead.
good.
You said it seems like there was no solution. I will say during COVID when they sent out the $1,200, to everyone. It was
Right.
pretty bold considering the general cost to build a guillotine is $1,200. It seemed like a very bold move by the upper class to be like, oh,
Very, very.
I'm not sure that you guys need to be glad no one put two and two together at that point. That was a very bad decision.
No, that's a very, very good point. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, you're right.
Don't ask me why I know the average price of building a guillotine. Do not ask me that.
I was gonna say what?
So, Daniel, what's your thoughts here?
It's clearly price gouging, and I agree pretty much with everything everybody said so far. It does need to be publicized more that this is a matter of price gouging for profits. I'm not really sure what the government can do about it, though. There's antitrust laws, but I'm not really sure what a solution would be. I just don't know enough about the laws affecting that whole arena. But I agree with you, Mr. King. I think we do need to keep pushing the idea that this is price gouging. It's not a matter of inflation that needs to be there.
Bobby, what did you, as a consumer and a mother, what did you think about the fact that record profits are not a part of the conversation, but everyone wants to talk about the inflation? Talia? Oh, I think your mic's on. I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. I got distracted for a second. Can you repeat that, James?
I said, what did you think about the fact that we're always talking about inflation and how high prices are, but we're not talking about record profits?
Yeah, I think it's problematic. I think that this is a distraction and that we don't hold those who have the most to lose. Personally, those who have the money in their pocket and making the profits, they don't want to let that go, and that's something that unfortunately, but we placate to them as a society, as the United States. We definitely placate to big business, big corporations. They don't pay their taxes in the way that the average American does. Is very problematic. It's been this way since post Reagan. And it's just sort of like it doesn't even exist. Who do you think is Who do you think is upping the prices? So
Well,
I don't have much more to say to that, but except to say that yeah, we should be talking about it. But however, it's interesting though how we don't except in these spaces right here.
Ms. Sims,
Yes.
what do you think? Everybody's talking about the price of gas, but nobody's talking about how much the president of Exxon is making.
Well, James, my background has been a community organizer. So I think in that along those lines, and as I said before, bottom line thinking, we as a people aren't powerless. We think we are because we have been told we are, and we have been treated like we are powerless. The government, the citizens get a double whammy because their money comes from us. Bottom line, when you get people don't stop to think that the government doesn't go out in the backyard of the Capitol and dig up money. They get it from us. If we as a people decide, hey, an example, say this young man, if we as an organizer say, if you don't look our children get to college and not have to spend the rest of their life paying it off, we're not going to pay taxes. We're not going to do this. That would cause an uproar. The first thing that was happen, the people that are in power and control are going to come at you head and strong. and they're going to say we're going to put you in jail, etc., etc. But they don't have enough jail to put everybody in jail. But as a people, we have to stand up for ourselves, and the people that represent us in the government know that we mean business. With that our humanism and just being alive, we won't stand for it anymore. There's a different and better way to deal with things.
My last question to the panel. One of the things that Trump said last night was that the Biden administration was responsible for the attempted assassination. Now, once again, as someone that has handled a firearm and knows the destruction of an AR-15 bullet, I find it remarkable that his ear has healed so quickly. Usually, a bullet singes, uh, but I'm not trying to get into a conspiracy theory here. But what did you think about his making that particular statement, Miss Sims?
Well, James, I always tell you, look, James, even at your age, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. Haven't I said that to you over and over again? And to me, and looking at the whole, then listen to what has happened. To me, it's part of a. It was part of a strategy. Trump is in terms of court and legal things, etc., and his followers. I mean, he's swimming. So something had to be done to get you all and the people that are that he's catering to get their attention away from that and get them to sympathize with him with what's going on. And it's sad to me that someone lost their lives over this, but it's to me it's very strange, and it was part of a strategy to get Trump back into the limelight and whatever. Uh, I looked at his ear the other night. I didn't see any, blood or part of his ear taken off, or I didn't hear if he went to the hospital, how he was treated and stuff. So here again, it's part of a strategy to get this guy back into the limelight, back to people's attention, for you to feel sorry for him.
Uh, Dahlia, what did you think? I haven't pronounced your name right all evening. I know.
Did you say Dahlia?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't. You know what? Honestly, I don't have a lot of thoughts to this right now. Um, I wonder if somebody else can take a crack at it. Let me ponder at that. Right now.
Melissa, I don't know why I'm hitting all the ladies first, but
Well, yeah, I agree with you. If he had been hit by an AR-15, even if it had grazed his ear, uh, the big, maxi pad that he wore at the convention aside, there would have been damage. Actually, I think somewhere somebody published a picture of Holyfield with the bite still taken out of his ear by
Wow.
Tyson, and a picture of Trump's ear from last week, and it was perfect and pristine to me. So, how the blood got there, I don't know. The whole thing was bizarre. I really, my thought was, this poor bastard with the AR-15 who shot him. God knows where they found him. It's
Mm,
just the whole thing is completely fishy. There was never any medical report. There's nothing. It's like
mm,
radio silence and any other assassination attempt. Um, the one on Gabby Giffords, the one on Pelosi's husband. You know, the media has been wall to wall with information.
Mhm.
Every time somebody shot at Reagan, whatever. I mean, it's wall to wall to wall to wall. So this is very bizarre. And what I particularly appreciate though is that it's just ignored by everybody. So
Mhm.
we just move forward. Like talk to the hand. Bye.
Yeah, I do want to add, like, when that happened, this is my level of frustration. The lengths at which number 45 goes to just take us through these situations is
Yeah.
exhausting. Is exhausting. Half the time I'm just like, how much do I want to put effort into having this conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's overwhelming, it's exhausting. And here we have folks who are like, oh yeah, he's great. Like, I'm so confused. I don't know what this is. I don't recognize this this world that we're living in right now. It's baffling to me, you know. I'm not saying we've been perfect, but this is on a whole different level. So yeah, that's what I will say. Just the lengths that he goes to just pull us through this right here is just overwhelming and very frightening. Actually, it's very it's frightening.
Luke, what do you
Uh,
think? As should we call you a politician?
yeah, I'd say that's fair. I've been called worse things today.
Okay.
Um, you know, the way you posed it to the other panelists was, what do you make of Trump blaming the Biden administration? I'd like to think that possibly him blaming the presidential administration for one of his wackadoodle supporters taking a pop shot at him. I'd like to think comes from the same place where Springfield, Ohio, is being just decimated by immigrants killing the beloved family pets, and that windmills give you cancer. I really think it's kind of in that same area of, what? This is a crazy thought that came into my head, and now I'm going to tell my legion of followers that will believe it and watch them
Mm-hmm.
all run with it on Facebook.
Javon.
Yep. So I was gonna say something similar to Luke. I think just him blaming it on Biden is one of the many outlandish things that he says. I don't even really take it seriously. I've already heard the elementary school kids at my school making jokes about that and some other things that Trump says all the time. It's just a big joke. What I will say is similar to what Miss Sims said, even though I'm not jumping to the conclusion that it was a political stunt or anything like that. I'm not really big on conspiracy theories. I will say that I was really nervous that like the shooting as a whole could be used to paint him as some sort of hero or some amazing person, strong American that we need to vote for. And it kind of did do that, but it didn't really linger as heavy as I thought it would. People aren't really talking about it too much anymore. If anything, he's down bad after that debate. But generally speaking, it wasn't Biden's fault. It's just one of the many outlandish things that Trump likes to say to get attention. And I'm really glad that the shooting in general has blown over enough to where I feel like it's still pretty even, or the race is. It's not dictating the race, is what I'm saying. So that's kind of how I feel about the whole thing.
Daniel, you want to put the final cap on that thought?
Okay, Donald Trump likes to project. If he's doing something wrong, he likes to project it onto somebody else. It's almost like he tells on himself. So he wants to accuse President Biden of being responsible for someone shooting at him. Who's the party that supports the NRA? The NRA who doesn't believe in any sort of common sense gun regulation. Who's the party that, who's the individual who instigated the whole insurrection on January 6th? That was Trump and the Republicans. Who is chanting Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence, and who built the gallows? It was all Republicans. Republicans are the ones that are pushing all the violent rhetoric and images of their their competition with, you know, gun sites and the image. We're out to get this person, and now Trump comes back and wants to blame violence on Biden. I think it's kind of rich that he's projecting his own shortcomings on Biden. And as John said, I'm not really a big one in conspiracy theories or anything like that, but boy, it does seem odd. The fellow who shot at Trump and supposedly grazed him was a Republican. Very sad that somebody else died, but Trump's ear doesn't appear to have been injured. After he was supposedly injured, you kind of see him disappear, kind of behind the lectern, and he reappears with blood. I don't know, the whole thing just seems weird. I mean, I'm not advocating for any kind of conspiracy theory here, but boy, it seems odd, doesn't it? And I think Philon said it certainly did put him back in the news cycle. And I think he was trying to play it up as, oh, look at that, I'm a martyr, and I've taken a bullet for you, which is kind of hilarious. But it's good that it didn't really take. I think it was, you got scratched maybe by a bullet, you got a boob, and you put a Band-Aid on it. Yeah, I don't see where he gets off blaming President Biden for
it. Are there any questions that you would like for the other panelists to talk about before we get into our final thoughts? Anyone?
The only thing I have to say is, unfortunately, I have to hop off early. I have to go get my daughter from her grandmother's house. So
well,
it is
give us
fully
your
9
final
o'clock.
thoughts. Yeah, give us your final thoughts before you leave.
My final thought is pretty short and sweet. I think that we are continuing to see a contrast between people that believe in democracy and our country continue to step up, and that's not just Democrats, that's moderates, and that's Republicans, coming behind one candidate and understanding that, look, they might not like the Democratic Party. Gonna be honest, a lot of Democrats don't like the Democratic Party, but there's something more important here to make sure we preserve our country. Yeah, we all have problems with it. We all got a million things we'd change tomorrow if we could. But it's still better than having a Christo-fascist nation, which is what Trump and Project 2025 would have. So it is refreshing to see, but I hope that we can continue to push and keep that energy moving through Election Day. I do not want anyone to sit on their couch and think that it's in the bag. We need everyone to get out.
Thank you for your time, man. I appreciate that, and I look forward to having you back on another show.
Oh, always a pleasure, James, and I appreciate being on with these wonderful panelists tonight. It was a great discussion and a great exchange of ideals.
Bye, Luke.
Take care.
Take care. Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.
Right. James, I wanted to say something. I don't know who it was who brought up, it made me think of it. So, I'm Haitian American. Wow, right? I don't want to justify what was said during the debate at all. It does hit home, and at the same time, like, the importance of understanding, like, sometimes you have to laugh because it's so ridiculous, and the impact that now what's going to happen to the people in Springville, Ohio, because I think it's already happened, right? So it's like these words, they carry weight, like because there's crazies out there they're going to act upon these words that was said by J.D. Vance, by former President number 45, and it's going to impact like real people in their homes.
Yeah, there was a bomb scare today. They had to empty out City Hall in Springfield today.
Yeah.
I tried not to give it any credence because it was so absurd. If you really look into the story, there were ducks. I believe it was some ducks and a few geese that were involved. no one's pets were harmed, but then it might have been a homeless person. It was never really substantiated. But anyway, I appreciate what you said, Dolly, because as you know, uh, this man had over 60 million people vote for him. And they haven't left. They're still here. They have not left. So, yeah, as a member of that community, you have now been branded. You know, so yeah, I do. I also wanted to kind of reflect back to your state, Miss Sims, and the lunch program, especially the one there in Minneapolis. Can you talk a little bit about that? Was that organized by communities, or how did that come about?
No, I can't speak to that because I've been out of the children going to school business for a long time. My children are around 50 years old now. And I kept up with things going on and participating in school a couple of years after they graduated and stuff. But I don't know about that program, but it's sad to think that we as a society had gotten to the point, for whatever means that came about, that put people in a place that they couldn't feed their children, that children were going hungry. And I'm glad that people thought about it, the necessity of not only saving the children, but the society to be able and willing to provide something like that. Uh, one thing that is kind of sad to me at the end of the school year, when school isn't in session, then some other organization has to come, and I think it struck a show that the children still get fed, maybe at community centers or things like that, throughout the year. And it has to be constant to keep somebody healthy and those children um, nutritional wise going. So I'm glad that that is in place. Whoever saw that and rose to the occasion to meet that.
One of the good things that came out of COVID was our school received funding for free breakfasts and free lunches for all the students, regardless of their income, the family income, household income. And I thought it was fantastic, and we've maintained it now for every year since then. So all the students come in the morning, and they have a nice breakfast for them. They have a lot of different selections of things, and I let them bring their food they didn't eat in the cafeteria. Let them bring it up to the classroom and finish their breakfast in the room if they like. And then for lunch, everybody gets a free lunch. I think there are like extras that people can buy, but everybody gets it's a nice lunch too. And so everybody gets one, and I'm just really pleased that we've been able to maintain that. And is one good thing, I guess, that kind of came out of the whole pandemic, at least at our school.
That
So
happened
can I
in
say
your.
something?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so my job is actually, as a delivery driver, my job is to deliver that free food to different charter schools that don't have cafeterias, so they're not serving it straight to the kids from the place. And I can tell you that it's a really great system. And I deliver to a lot of communities with kids that really need it. Places like Paris, California. Places like Hemet, California. Like, these kids need it. Some of these kids, like, that's the only meal they get all day. They go home and their parents are fighting, or they just don't have anything in the refrigerator. And so, just to piggyback off of what you said, Daniel, it's a great thing. And here in California, we did maintain it as well.
That's great.
So,
Yeah, I was going to say New York City has that as well. Again, also started during COVID. There was always meals, but not free for everyone. And so it's breakfast, lunch, and snacks for after school. So the kids are getting fed. And then during the summer months, there are sort of centralized schools where people can go to pick up meals. They're basically like boxed, ready to eat. There were also programs to feed seniors with food insecurity, especially folks living in public housing. Some of that has fallen away, unfortunately. But the issue of food inequity and food insecurity is a huge one in New York City, um, and is something I hope will be more further addressed on a national basis with the new administration.
Another nice program that our schools come up with, we have a few empty classrooms, and they created a program called the Big Locker, they call it, and they have all different kinds of things there. They have like toiletries, uh, deodorant, shampoo, all that kind of stuff, and they have clothes, all different kinds of clothes. A lot of them are donated from manufacturers. I think they do have some gently used clothing, and it's all there. And the students are encouraged to take whatever they like. And we try to make it so that all students use it, so that it isn't something that only certain students use. So we can tell them, like, if you're at gym and your gym clothes are kind of stinky or something, go down to the big locker and get yourself a clean set of clothes. And they just take them. And I think they even have a washer and dryer that you can wash the students' clothes. And they have like prom gowns and things like that. Like after students wear a prom gown, I guess they wear it again. A lot of them donate it to the big locker, and then somebody the following year can use it. And it's just a really nice program, and they encourage all the students to use it, not just folks that maybe can't afford to get a new stick of deodorant or anything like that.
As we're talking, it kind of reminds me of through the years I have seen watched some programs how as creative people, one good thing can lead to another. I was watching a TV program a while in terms of lunches, and the children weren't eating the lunches. I don't think it was here in Minnesota, but it was someplace. And so adults, actually nutritionists, start noticing it. So they intentionally went in and changed the food, talked to the children, and actually it took a while and some money to actually find out why they weren't eating, it wasn't tasting good, and then found something that's nutritious that the children would eat, which led into them doing gardening, teaching the children about gardens out on the school. If the school had an area for it, to do a garden and about gardening and things like that, and where your food comes from. I know here in Minnesota we have several programs that teach children about food and things like that.
Well, I appreciate everyone's time. I'm going to go around and get everyone's final thoughts. And as I said, I appreciate everyone's time. I look forward to getting a lot of you back for some of the conclusions of this series of conversations. So I'm going to start with the teacher. Daniel, give us your final thoughts and anything and of course, your social media if you like.
I think this election is a very, very important election. I think it actually is a matter of the existential survival of our democracy, and it's no exaggeration. Uh, we have to make sure that Kamala Harris wins, whether you like everything about her or not. Uh, she is the democracy candidate. She's not a Democrat or a Republican necessarily. She's the candidate that's going to continue our democracy, and I actually like it. So I'm encouraging everybody to vote. It was a very nice meeting everybody here, and that's about my thoughts for the evening. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you.
Okay. Appreciate your time there, Daniel. And as I said, I look forward to having you back on one of the podcasts.
Thank you.
Siobhan.
Yeah. So I think I learned a lot here. My perspective of a lot of political and social issues is very ADHD. I get clips of it from all the different social media platforms that I use because I'm an iPad kid. But I think hearing the perspective of the demographic of people that are voting the most is what I need to hear, as a young person. And so I'm very grateful for all the information that everybody shared. And I'm very grateful to have a platform here on your podcast, James. So thank you all very much.
Yeah, appreciate your time and look forward to talking to you again. Uh, let's see. Well, a lady is going to have the last word here, so let's, Miss Sims,
Yes.
your final thoughts.
Yes. I apologize for being late. I was here. It was James' fault. But in thinking, it makes me sad in a sense that, and James can relate to this. I'm 75 years old, and I remember during our time, three things that really struck me was it doesn't matter who you vote for, your vote doesn't count anyway. You can go braless, doesn't hurt to go braless. And there was a third thing, I forgot it. But in terms of the voting, people believed it. Oh, I know that marriage. You didn't need a marriage, be married to to it didn't count. It was okay. But then even back then, I stopped to think. But wait a minute, a lot of this. Our country is built on that marriage and that piece of paper. So you better be careful what you're doing. And the voting thing, as it comes down through the years, I'm looking back. It makes me sad as I see this generation here. Before me, a lot of that people still believe that now. It got passed down through the years, and I see the results of it now. And I'm personally trying to do what I can to get people to stop and think. And so, about the three things: the strategy, the power, and control. It's there always. And remember, with an election, and James, you'll relate to this, keep your eye on the prize. The prize is not Donald Trump or any president per se, it's what that person brings to the table. Like a person can only run 2 terms to be president, but he can appoint and have behind him people on the Supreme Court that can live forever and change rules and allow people not to have to go to jail like him and things like that. So it's always the power behind the power. Stop to think about that. It's what they bring to the table. And once you vote for someone, not because you're a friend or you like them or whatever, to me, I always think, okay, what is it's kind of like a card game to me. I want someone that when they go to play, they know what the game is, they know how to play the game, they know who the players are that will help them to be able to play the game. So think about things that are going on around you that can be changed, and we are not helpless people.
All right. Okay. Uh, glad you could join us, Miss Sims. And as always, I always encourage you to come and talk with us. So sometimes, I say I think you live in a glass house, but that's our little joke between us, right?
Yes, don't throw stones, James. And you keep away from the house of the rising sun.
Yes. Uh, uh, Melissa.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciated being on this panel, and I think it's important to get different voices and different perspectives. And I think we need to, just as a society, do more of this to kind of encourage ourselves to understand that we do have power. I think that was a very important point. We do. The power of vote is important, and if you say, "Oh, it doesn't count," it means that you are acceding to those who do have power and assert that power. There are a lot of people who died for this vote. They still die for this vote. So it's really important. I will say, in the last, I don't know, 30 years, I don't think I've ever missed a vote. Um, so I feel good about that because at least my voice is out there. And I think it's important for all of us. For me, this election is the most important thing in my lifetime. And I thought that Biden Biden, the election for Biden was the most important one, but actually this tops it by a lot. Project 2025 is no joke. It is imperative that people educate themselves as to what that playbook really says, because it is the end of the United States of America as we know it. It is bringing in a Christo-fascist, white nationalist country. And don't make any mistake that it is anything other than that. Those pages include things like putting in 400,000 new beds for immigration so that there are places to put people in camps. And that's in writing. So I think it's up to all of us who have some understanding and some knowledge to impart that knowledge, to become engaged, to help others become engaged, and to understand what the stakes are. Is Kamala Harris my ideal candidate? There is no ideal candidate. This is a very big country with a lot of interests. And because of our system of government, it also requires acceding to the fact that there's a lot of money here and there's a billionaire class that wants to assert itself. Just the whole playing of getting Kamala Harris into place in the first place took a lot of skullduggery on Biden's part. So I think we're all here to say, vote your conscience, but be educated and don't give it away. Don't throw it away.
Right.
If you're going to vote, then vote as an educated person. And if you want to support Trump, well, okay, that's for you to do, but don't do it as an idiot. Do it as something affirmative that you have researched. Do your homework. And again, thank you for this platform and this opportunity, and to meet all of you. It's been really terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa, as always. Appreciate your time. Go ahead, take us home.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, James. As always, it's good to see you. So nice to meet everyone. I agree with what you've all said. This is um, a very important election. Our democracy, the democracy that we're trying to continually strive for every day, is at risk. Right? Is at risk. And Melissa, you're absolutely right. We have to stay informed. We have to help those other states that need us to, to get out there and get folks to vote and to understand what the risk is at looking at a Trump administration. It's no joke. So I'll just keep it short and sweet.
All right, well,
Let's hear from you, James.
well, everyone pretty much knows my stance. I am a never Trumper. Uh, I don't know any other way to put it. I've had my own personal dealings with Trump in Atlantic City. I kind of, I'm not dealing with this election, from a he said, she said. I actually know some of the conditions that happen in Atlantic City. Him not paying labor union workers, sending immigrant workers home without any pay, and things like that. But the purpose of my show is to get people together to discuss their points of view. Whether you are a Democrat or a Republican, I think it is very important that we all have somewhere to express our feelings. And it's sometimes I have to bite my tongue, but I think it's very important to hear both sides. I appreciate everyone, whatever their point of view, and I do, Miss Sims, think that Miss Sims, Melissa, everyone, I think that this election is very important. Uh, Take some time and read some of 2025, Project 2025. Uh, it's actually scary. It Uh, I'm a little older, just a couple years than Miss Sims, but I wonder what happened, to the Civil Rights Act. I'm still. You're talking about John Lewis Voting Act. I thought all this was settled.
Mm.
You know, uh, the state of our country now. Uh, I know that we've made progress, but we've made progress when the goalpost is continuously being moved. So, as I said, I think everyone knows my stance. I don't want to get up on that soapbox. That's not what this show is about. It's more about you. It's not about me. So, thank everyone for their time. I appreciate it, and I hope to have you back on a panel soon. Thank you, everyone.
Happy trails. Good night, everyone.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.